Hi, I'm Clint Stonebreaker, Executive Director of the Insight Program. Today's topic is why enthusiastic sobriety? The drug and alcohol epidemic has been affecting and afflicting young people, adults too, but in particular young people, for the past several decades. From the time of the 1960s on, not that people didn't get high before then, but from that period on, more and more adolescents and young adults have not just tried drugs and alcohol, but have wound up with a serious problem. Along with the problem of drug and alcohol abuse has come an increase in treatment for substance abuse disorders, particularly for young people. A program like the Insight Program is of the belief that long-term recovery is contingent on a couple of factors. One, that the treatment itself be quality. In other words, what's happening in therapy for that initial period of time has to be of the utmost quality. The aftercare and the follow-up needs to be thorough and extensive. And there must be an approach, again, because a program like Insight is working with young people, the approach must be centered on the needs of a young person. Now, a lot of these needs include effective counseling, developing better coping mechanisms. But one thing that often gets forgotten with young people, again, is the motivation that they have for using in the first place, which is primarily peer acceptance and having fun. The whole idea of enthusiastic sobriety is born out of the belief that young people get high because it's fun and it feels good. And again, being young, it's difficult to see the consequences or to take responsibility for the consequences of their drug and alcohol abuse. So they continue this behavior because they like it, because it's fun to them. And at least for the initial period of time, the beginning stages of drinking and using, it's effective. Now, we believe if sobriety doesn't meet those same needs, and actually meet them quickly, the chances of a young person who is still having a difficult time taking responsibility for his or her actions, they're going to really struggle to be honest on the level that they need to be in order to gain anything therapeutically. And they're going to struggle to make the fundamental peer connections that they need in order to find sobriety over the long haul. Historically, we can look at different approaches that people have had, whether that's an overly punitive approach, remember the war on drugs? I think we're still fighting it. All the way to all of the approaches based on the opiate epidemic, whether that's medical assisted treatment or harm reduction. All of these approaches have been coming and going, again, for several decades. The reason why the 12 steps or a 12-step approach is effective is because for an addict and alcoholic who's affected on the levels of physical, emotional, and spiritual, the 12-step approach covers all of those areas. As a person who's in long-term 12-step recovery, and as someone who entered recovery at a very young age, 17, almost 18, I can attest to the fact, at least in my own personal experience and what I've seen in others, that 12-step recovery is effective when a person is able to reach the level of personal responsibility that allows he or she to move forward in the process. Drug abusers, addicts, alcoholics, we are masters at finding people to enable us to not deal with difficult circumstances. We're experts at it. And one of the problems with alternative approaches to 12-step recovery historically has been that addicts and alcoholics are looking for that. They're looking for any way possible to not bear any responsibility for their actions. Granted, anyone who has a drug or alcohol problem has other issues. That's really important to understand. However, for a drug addict or an alcoholic or a drug abuser or an alcohol abuser, until abstinence is established, it's going to be very difficult for that individual to take a deeper and actually effective look at those issues. Often what's missed is that even for a young person that hasn't been using extensively for years, there comes a point where that individual knows that what he or she is doing is problematic. So it's not an issue of knowing right from wrong, good from bad, etc. It really is an issue of, am I getting the desired effect from what I'm doing? And if I stop, what's going to be on the other side? Again, you have to think like an adolescent. One of the beauties of enthusiastic sobriety is when a young person steps into an enthusiastic sobriety program, what they see is a group of people that look like them, sound like them, are having fun, and most importantly, in their mind, those people are very, very cool. Anybody that enters recovery, gets sober at a young age, is going to be tempted by drugs and alcohol for several years to come. What foundation is laid early on is vital, which is why drug and alcohol recovery has to take top priority. If it doesn't, if other things are made more important than the fundamental sobriety, then there are going to be cracks in that foundation for the person who's trying to stay sober. And whatever desired result there is for family members or for anybody else that's involved will be much more difficult to achieve because the foundation isn't strong. Sobriety, initially for young people, has to be fun. It has to feel good. It has to have the payoffs that a young addict or alcoholic is looking for. Over time, he or she will build the emotional coping mechanisms, the life skills that are needed in order to stay sober over the long haul. A big part of that is repairing family relationships. Another large part of that is understanding that life on life's terms can be difficult sometimes, and I have to have better means of coping with that. Another huge part of it is the realization that the feelings and the lives of others are as important as my own, etc. I mean, basic awareness, basic life awareness. But first things first. First things first for a young person entering treatment is I've got to find a way of life that is as fun and as attractive as the life I had before. Because if that's not the case, the chances of staying sober are severely reduced.